of Planning and Development and DPR about the new proposed facilities and their design guidelines for the new proposed Civic Core. So we will start out, as we traditionally do, with calling the meeting to order and commissioner introductions, any announcement of the meeting procedures, and then we'll get into the discussion. And I'll introduce the folks that are going to speak tonight. We'll start off with letting them talk about their design guidelines and what's going on in their project, just to give us some broad overviews. We'll open it up to commissioner questions, and then we'll open it up to community questions and feedback. We've allotted pretty much equal time between the commission and the community. We definitely want to get your questions and give you guys a lot of time to ask people that are in the know about this project and about their designs and their guidelines. So with that, I'll start out. Introductions. My name is Sisco. I'm chair of the ANC, and I'm also the commissioner for ANC 34G01, which is all of Hawthorne and portions of Barnaby Woods. Thank you all for coming out tonight. And I'll ask that we start from the left, go to the right, and then we'll go with the commissioner that's online.
On the left.
You're
I'm Carol Grunwald. I'm the commissioner for SMD 03. That extends from 27th Street on the east, all along Broad Branch and up toward McKinley. Thank you for coming.
I really thank you for coming. I'm Liz Nagia, SMD 07, which starts on the south side of the military, goes east side of Reno, north side of Chevy Chase Parkway, and the west side of, what's that? Anyway, thank you for coming. I walk it all the time. Thank you. So it looks like a little version is upside down.
Good evening, everybody. I'm the commissioner for Single Member District 02. And vice chair of the commission in my district is north of the military, where St. John's College High School is. Up on Oregon to Tennyson, over to Utah, down back to military. And also have Unicorn Lane north of that, and Oregon Knolls just north of that. So that's the district. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Peter Gosselin. I represent District 6, which is largely the west side of Connecticut Avenue back to Friendship Heights between Military and Western and the Chevy Chase Circle. We're working with the hybrid technology here in the library, and people online still say they're getting everything echoed. We're working on it, but it's not our technology. Let's see if they can hear you.
Hi, Corinthia Simmons. I'm the commissioner for Single Member District 05, which goes from Legation in Connecticut back to Broad Branch all the way to Western.
Thank you, Commissioner Fennessy.
Hi, I'm Laura Finnizzi. I hope
You're on mute.
they're short.
You're muted, Laura. No, she took herself off mute.
Oh,
Huh.
Try again. Uh-oh.
I'm unmuting me.
So what that's about.
Oh, they can hear Laura, but we can't.
Okay.
Okay, go on and introduce yourself, Laura.
All right. I'm trying to. Hi, it's me. I'm at home because we had some workmen and I needed to keep my dog calm. But I'll be up there as soon as they get finished. And I have that area.
Does that mean we can't hear anybody online? So let me see. Can I just ask the library people? We are not able to hear anybody online, but because of the feedback issue, we have muted our computers. Does this screen need to be, does sound need to be on this screen? At least output, not input.
So even with this being muted, I don't understand why we're getting the feedback that we shouldn't.
I mean, if we can't hear anybody online, that means nobody online can ask questions.
Well, they can ask in the chat. That would be the only way we could facilitate.
Okay, for folks online, we're trying to fix this problem, but did you hear Lisa Gore's suggestion that if we can't fix it, or if it takes some time to fix it, you can put your questions in the chat, which is at the bottom of your screen labeled chat.
I go.
You want to keep going with the, or, oh, he needs to fix the computer.
Yeah, we're about time. 7:20.
Laura, can you try speaking?
Sure. My name is Laura Finizzi and I have the SMD area around Lafayette School between Broad Branch and Utah.
Okay, thank you, commissioners. With that, I think we're gonna have to live with a little bit of feedback. The only way to hear the audience members is to have that computer sound on, so there'll be a little bit of feedback in the room, if you all would just bear with us. And with that, I want to introduce or have the panelists introduce themselves, starting with, excuse me?
There's an echo.
There's going to be one, because that's the only way we can hear people in the audience.
Yeah, but why can't you turn it down until they speak?
We can do that if you want to, the tech guy.
So, sir, is it possible to mute it until someone speaks? I mean, what we're getting is a feedback that's confusing.
That will be the direction of the person at the podium.
Okay, stand now.
So
Okay.
they should be able to hear us. I just muted.
Okay. Yeah.
Where's the screen? Maybe you should say.
All right. So we'll start with you, Director Gavilan. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, I'll find my own deck here right now.
I think you closed it.
What's that?
I think you have closed that tab.
Didn't, but just one additional second, and profuse apologies, folks. Okay, sorry, can you all hear me online? I can't see, so I would need some verification.
So folks online, just put something in the chat if you can hear us. You see my mouth moving, that means.
What's that? Try again? Okay, I'm trying again. Let me know if they can hear me now. I'm gonna keep on talking.
They can hear now.
Okay, great.
So back in October 2023, we came and talked about the library's aspirations for the built environment. I'm here along with our Director of Capital Planning, Jaspreet Pawa, and our Director of Community Engagement, Martha Sococho. We are sort of a three-headed monster when it comes to capital projects around the city. We've been doing this together for about a decade, and we're looking forward to doing it here again. It's important to also recognize that Jaspreet is part of the technical evaluation panel for this project at Chevy Chase. And that is good news for all district residents because nobody drives people harder than Jaspreet, and no one settles when Jaspreet's involved. So with that, I'm going to just go very quickly, talk a little bit about, I've been here, by the way, at DC Public Library for 11 years, and this is my 30th year in public libraries. I've been fortunate to work very deeply on about 7 capital projects in my time here at DC, including the Cleveland Park Library was my first sort of soup to nuts project. That is our most popular library, our most visited library in Washington, DC, in terms of neighborhood libraries. And also the MLK Library downtown. That was something that I also worked on, soup to nuts. So we've got a ton of experience within the library's own team around capital projects. I'm a lover of libraries, and what I've tried to do, speaking to folks in Chevy Chase, that neither Jaspreet nor myself nor the library's board of trustees would settle for anything but design excellence in any library, regardless of whether it's a standalone building or a mixed-use building, and we can chat more about that as we go through. I'm not going to talk about the building that we're sitting in, but clearly we've got some issues with it, and it needs to be replaced in some way, shape, or form for a whole host of reasons. This is actually an interesting statistic. This is, and this graph is a little bit dated. It's looking at how the libraries were visited in 2023. I could update this with this year's statistics, but you'll always see that nearby libraries get a lot more usage than the Chevy Chase Library does. And the reason is that this building doesn't have all the wonderful amenities that new libraries need, that residents deserve. I consider this a transactional library. When I say transactional, it's a building that is really designed for picking up your books and leaving. It's not great for meetings. It's not great for studying. It's not great for affinity groups. It's not great for a lot of things. And so that's something that we want to address now that we're going into the second quarter of the 21st century. If you go to Cleveland Park, you go to the Southwest Library, you go to MLK, you'll see that these buildings were built for people, not for objects. And when I talk about how we've gone from a transactional environment in our libraries to a transformational environment in our libraries, it's simply we've gone from something that is really focused on objects to focused on people and their needs. This is a cool graph. A little cartoon. I don't take credit for it. This was actually designed by the Dutch firm that worked on the MLK Library back in 2017 through 2020. And this just sort of illustrates how libraries have transformed and what we need to do here at Chevy Chase to build something that residents deserve and a place that people will want to come to, even non-readers. I like speaking to people who don't read a lot because I wasn't a great reader as a child, and I would have loved for libraries to have spaces to hang out, slides, and a bunch of other cool things. So we're building this really with everyone in mind. I mentioned we've been working on, DC Public Library has put together an incredible complement of libraries since the beginning of what they call the Library Renaissance here in 2009 with the major renovation of the Tacoma Park Library. Moving forward through 2022, the Lamont Riggs Library. Again, we've got just a whole host of new projects, both full renovations, new builds, co-locations, and everything in between. We had these great little pictures, so this doesn't take any time, just showing the sort of before and after of different library projects, Anacostia versus what it is today. The Francis Gregory Library, designed by David Ajay. This is what it looks like today. Again, they've become these really marvelous architectural specimens that really, I think, profoundly display to residents that the government cares about you. We want you to use these civic spaces. And again, that is what we want to do and what we have every intention of doing in Chevy Chase. The box will look different for sure. The box will look more like this is Cleveland Park. This is the MLK Library. You've been to all these libraries, I hope, so you don't need me showing you pictures. The Southwest Library is just staggeringly beautiful, and it's not going to change when we redo Chevy Chase. The West End Library, for those of you who know, was a standalone library in dire need of repair or rebuild. And the city chose to rebuild this library as part of a mixed-use library. What's coming down the road here for Chevy Chase. And the results has been frankly, I believe the second or third best used neighborhood library in Washington, D.C. A very efficient library from a staffing perspective because it's got great sight lines. It's got a tremendous amount of energy. It's a 20,000 square foot library all on one floor. So circulation is easy. It's got all the trappings, the study rooms, the meeting rooms. It's got the adjacent cafe. The cafe is not operated by the library, but it is. It adds to the variety of uses in the building, and it's gorgeous. And it can only be in the West End. I love to show this sort of constructivist art that sort of waves around the building. These are famous residents of the West End, including Duke Ellington and Ruth Bader Ginsburg and a bunch of other people. So we design libraries, and we'll design the Chevy Chase Library to really respond to what Chevy Chase residents want. It should be made very, very clear that regardless of who comes out on top in this selection process for the entire development, that the process by which we design a new library only begins. So we will be spending, as we normally do, I don't know, a year and a half on design, where we will be inviting all of you in and we'll beg your forgiveness and patience. The technology will work better, but we will put together all the proper adjacencies. Where does the children's room go? Where do the adults go? Where are the meeting rooms? How many meeting rooms? All these details have not been decided and will not be decided by the time a selection of the overall development is made. So that is absolutely profoundly important that we stress that over and over and over again. Just a few more pictures of the West End Library. And you'll see, and Jaspreet, who's going to take over in a minute, even in this picture, you will see our own commitment to biophilic design. And this is a term that you might be hearing more and more. Biophilia, of course, is this innate nature that we all want to be close to trees and what that does for our health and our happiness. And we want to introduce biophilic elements to all of our designs as much as humanly possible. You'll see it in the West End. You'll see it at Southwest. You even see it at Cleveland Park, where maybe the best part about that new library is that very cool tree that we built in the children's room. So that's something that will take place at the Chevy Chase Library as well. This is where I'm turning it over to you, Jaspreet. Great. So I'm going to turn it over to Jaspreet Pawar, who is our STAR Director of Capital Planning. Again, she's on the selection team for the overall project, and she can talk about the design guidelines. They are posted. They have been posted on the RFP site. We're not deviating from them, but she can stress what they are and talk to you a little bit more.
Thank you, Rich. Yes. Good evening, everyone. Am I loud and clear? Okay. And everything Rich said, exactly that. This document that you see, this document has lived on the DIMPET website, and it's sort of our guideline on how we approach design. And this is to serve as a guideline to the design partners that we will onboard. We use the word guideline as opposed to requirements. One of the things that you'll see as we start talking about how we got to excellence, it's the same mindset. We obviously want to hire the best in class design partner. So we are starting with a good team to begin with, and we do not want to be prescriptive about what we want them to do, but we still created sort of like a guideline framework. And that's how I would ask everybody, embrace this information. I'm happy to talk. We've got this here. We've got this on the boards. We can dissect this any which way. So as we put together this document, we are thinking about the design and the life cycle performance requirements. And if this starts to feel like a scholarly lecture, please stop me, raise your hand, and I'll stop. So we have to think about built environment, both in its qualitative terms and its quantitative terms when we're giving somebody a design brief. So quantitatively, we are looking at, if you go by this document, 23,000 square foot for core and bespoke library program spaces, designed and built for at least a 50-year life cycle, right? So everything that's specified has to meet that sort of a mandate. Qualitatively, we have said we are providing exhibits from the most recently delivered libraries, Southwest, which was opened in 2021, and Lamont Riggs, which was opened in 2022. While we've got this fantastic portfolio of library projects, providing two benchmarks that are most recently built, put forth our most recent thinking and the compliance that we've had to do with all the mandates. So that's the thinking there. It also acknowledges that these two libraries, while extremely distinct from each other, respond very uniquely to the context within which they are framed. And that's how we want to approach this library in Chevy Chase. What's common is our approach to certain attributes, maximizing visual and physical connection to outdoors. We all want that, right? We all heard you in the community engagement process as well. The connection to outdoors for formal and informal gatherings with universal accessibility. And universal accessibility is more than complying with ADA. And we are constantly challenging our own thinking and asking our collaborators who probably have better sophisticated tools than we have in our portfolio to think about what universal accessibility means. Integration of biophilia, I think Rich kind of planted that seed. We've tested this concept of biophilia in so many different ways. It may show up directly, as in providing you access to nature and views, and where it cannot, it shows up as motifs in the language of the architecture. So one of the slides that I'll show you has a facade of the Lamont Riggs Library, and very beautifully there was captured a memory of a grove of trees across the library that was no longer going to be there when the library was finished building because there was another development going. So as a homage to that, our architects kind of integrated that motif into the folded plate facade of the building. So, and in the meeting room, for example, when you walk in, the ceiling has motifs of trees, etc. So I'm oversimplifying the complexity of what biophilia can do and how we kind of creep that into the build form. And but realizingly or unrealizingly, human psychology and human neurology responds very positively to biophilia. So that's our thinking there. Natural light, I think we've done a good job all throughout. One of the things that we have with these two exhibits, none of the spaces are below grade, which means we are maximizing the ability for all who reside above grade to be connected outdoors with natural light. We are very partial to northern light. That brings in glare-free light for all kinds of reading, work on the computers, but it also reduces our energy footprint. So we are extremely partial to being on the north side.
Sorry, just turning the camera.
Oh, okay.
They're having issues and can't see something online.
Gotcha. This one. And so continuing with the themes, and I think this is where I want all of us to understand, this is what will guide our collaboration with our design partners. This is the mindset that we're approaching design with. And as Rich said, we won't settle for anything less than excellence. But there's always a spectrum of, if you want more light, more ventilation, then you have a lower energy performance. So those are the levers that every design partner or design collaborator has to work through. And therefore, we are not prescriptive, we are performance based on our requirements. resilience and high performance. For a 50-year life cycle, you need that. And resilience, our definition is, while libraries cannot be first responders, but in case of natural disasters, libraries can be first restorers. So that's a mindset that we approach resilience with. Adaptability and flexibility, like Rich said, that transaction to transformation, who knows what the library will look like 30 years. But thinking about trying to future-proof as much. We won't be perfect. We won't get it perfect. But the idea is built in enough capacity to be adaptable and flexible in the next 50 years. We may still have to do some adaptation, but at least we won't have to dig up concrete and we won't have to break everything to get to that adaptability and flexibility. And as reference exhibits, if you can see that gray box on the right side of the slide, we provided program summary for both those projects. Very different, very unique, enriched, asked me this morning. So the square footage on both of these, yes, they're different square footages, but that's what you tell us, what services you want. Rich and the team of librarians that collaborate on the building program agree with that. And that's how we start drawing the building. So the building program will evolve collaboratively with you. We provided site plan, again, two very different solutions for two different contexts. We provided floor plans, just to say this is how we achieve the building program in its floor plan. We provided exterior images, we provided interior photos to say this is our benchmark of quality, nothing less will do. Instead of providing like a 50,000 page document that says thou shall, we provide proof of the work that we have done that we can benchmark to. I hope this is all making sense to everybody. Great. So just what I was talking about. So the space program of two libraries side by side, there's space dedicated to adult services, how we got 4,000 square foot in one library and 5,000 square foot in another is all through those collaborations that we've had. And, when we sit down with Rich and our staff that have to ultimately deliver those services, that kind of informs all of these square footages. Again, we are not prescriptive. As much as our friends at DIMPED wanted me to give them square footage, we won't do that because that's sort of like not the right recipe for us. We want to give you how we've done this distinctly on two. And there will be, this is a term that I borrow from Rich, the unique spaces in each library. We don't know what those are, but they will be something that our architects and engineers will help dovetail and maybe find synergies with some of the spaces that DPR will have. So all of that to evolve. I don't want to dive into the details of the floor plan, but this was offered as guidance to the design partners and the developers, et cetera, who are collaborating on this. Again, there's enough information for them to understand how each of these spaces, what the design intent is, and how that was realized. I'm happy to, you don't need to dive into each of these spaces. Like I said, these are available online. We've got the boards. If you want to digest this and if you have questions, we are happy to discuss those. Both those libraries are 2 floor each. So Southwest Library is 2 floors. Most of the public spaces for adults are on the 2nd floor. The children is on the 1st floor. The teens is on the 2nd floor. And the build form and its integration into the open space over there looks like this. It has the north face opens to the park. The north face that you see in this photograph, it reclaims all that open space, and it does that quite beautifully. Rich already showed this photograph, but what we're also trying to show in this visual is what you're looking at. We just assume that if an architect has not visited our libraries, when they look at this diagram, they're able to say, what are we talking about from an interior standpoint? Same thing with other visuals that we provided, how we've done adult collection. When people imagine libraries, and clearly what you have in Chevy Chase, you have these tall stacks of books. And Rich has, to our delight, given us permission to lower the stacks and create place for people and not so much get bogged down into collections. And, you can quiz Rich on what his thinking is on collection size, etc. But that gives us a lot of flexibility on creating these spaces to collaborate. Think, play, work in whichever way works for you. Different vignettes of how you sit, whether you need a lounge setting, you need a group setting on a table, you need a conference space. So we think a variety of spaces work well for a variety of patrons. Le Mondrian, same thing. We want to show you this is a very different site. We didn't have the same
luxury of having the face of the library on the north. We have the harshest southwest face, and therefore the architectural response varies over there, and the materiality that we use varies over there. But the thoughtfulness that has gone into dialing each of these space is the same. In both these libraries, we have some fantastic public art that was commissioned. In Lamont Riggs, it was sourced in collaboration with the community. We remain open to that idea in this location as well. And more visuals of how we've done children's space here. Yeah. And, our lead scorecard is sort of like how we accomplished our sustainability goals at both these libraries. The one thing that's different about Chevy Chase, as we're constantly raising the bar, in addition to meeting the LEED standard for energy performance and all the other attributes for water consumption, indoor air quality, we're also required to pursue net zero. Net zero energy is what we are aspiring for, which loosely means that the buildings should be able to produce as much energy, at least for the civic use, as it consumes. How we do that, whether it's solar, geothermal, and we've seen sort of like those responses in different compositions from the teams. And at this point, I think I should probably either give it back to Rich and or Martha to talk about what our community engagement process looks like through design.
Yeah, well, just in the interest of time, since we started so late, folks, again, our assurance is to the community that we don't spare time on that iterative design process with the community. We'll spend a ton of time together putting together a building program. And that's something that we do with our architects, because we don't want to have it, the architects hear it secondhand. So just be patient. Once the architects are on board, then we will go through that design process. Construction, obviously, because this is a larger site, will be more complicated, but we would do that, obviously, as we've done everything in partnership with DPR and DEMPED. So I think we will pause there. Oh, and there is interim services was part of the RFP. So typically, it's not a panacea. It's usually like a 3,000 square feet or less space that residents can come pick up some books. We might have some laptops. They're never a great space, but we will. But that is part of the requirement of this project.
And we do have some precedents on the interim. Just
Oh
to
yeah, we do. Yeah,
before.
we're gonna not go into what interim library design looks like for now.
Right. Yeah.
Great. So do we open it up to questions? Do we turn it over to? Yes. Do we have to change the setting here to? Okay.
No.
Okay. Anyway.
Two questions. There are some people in this community who say that this library serves the purposes that this community needs. I noticed in your chart about branch library use, Palisades and Chevy Chase were the lowest. Am I right that both of those are the only two branch libraries that haven't been rebuilt?
I mean, in all fairness, Palisades is also in a very, very, it's tucked away in a very suburban community. So you could design anything over there and it's not going to get the same type of traffic. So I don't want to just say, you build it new and it's going to get this type of traffic.
But let me just ask you to address this first question. To those in this community who say this is fine, what do you say? And you cannot use tonight's meeting as an example. Other than that, what's wrong with this facility that needs improvement?
I mean, if you look at the usable space in this building, I mean, this is a 24,000 square foot building, but what is actually usable by the public is a lot less. We've got a lot of unnecessary circulation space. We've got a lot of space here that's frankly not usable. I mean, that's one thing. I mean, I'm not going to quibble about some people like this kind of like quasi-brutalist design. And, you could do a full gut of the building. I'm not, that is not something that I'm saying is impossible to do. However, what we found more success with sort of new builds where we can not retrofit into an existing footprint, but rather design really from scratch. I mean, there are limitations to what you would be able to do in this building from, what is this building, 60
72.
72?
So then on the other side of the coin, there are some people in this community who have said that in the 8 development proposals, the library and the 2 public institutions, the library and the community center, were both sort of empty sets. Is there anything about any of the boxes that any of the 8 design teams presented that you find objectionable or are going to be unable to work with?
No, and I mean, I think, and I'll let Gio can talk about that specifically, or Daniel. I mean, those are, that's what you saw were the architects and developers responding to the RFP, but there is still some iteration to go back and forth. There was nothing in there that looked unworkable to me from the perspective of a library. And again, we have our requirements, and those will have to be met.
And one more question along that line. Had you expected the development teams to handle it in the way they had, or had you expected there to be more detailed design about the library in those initial proposals?
I would have actually preferred less. I think that architectural software has gotten so sophisticated that my wife is an architect, and she told me this, so I can't take credit for it, that the software has gotten so sophisticated that it can be somewhat misleading, that what you see here is what you're going to get because the renderings look so lifelike and realistic. The truth is, it sometimes was better when you were just seeing massing blocks, right? Like, okay, we anticipate the garage here, library here, rec center here, apartments here, and let our imaginations run with it a little bit more. But everything is workable, and so I would really stress that.
I'm concerned about the size of the new library as compared to the size of the current library. I'm also concerned about the size of the collections. You said you were creating more space for people inside the library and less space for collections. So I'd like you to talk about that, please.
I'm happy to. The size of the library, it will feel bigger than what we have here in terms of what public has access to. So in our guidelines, we gave 2 examples for the teams to react to. One is an 18,000 square foot building that we have at Southwest, and one is 22,000 square feet, 23,000 square feet at the Lamont Ridge Library. One doesn't feel demonstrably different than the other. It really comes down to what we prioritize during that iterative design process. So I wouldn't quibble about 1,000 square foot here or there. And again, if you were to take measurements of the usable amount of square feet in this particular space, you would find it a lot less than what you're going to have when the new library opens. We don't know exactly. That's something that is still going to be iterated. There's not that level of specificity. And, it's still a live RFP, by the way. So, there's still a lot of back and forth. I believe, and there were a number of them that were in the 24,000 range, right? I'm sorry, I only paid attention to the library part, but I'm guessing that that the response. I mean, I think that basically they met all the requirements even for DPR, and Brent Sisco can talk about that as well.
That you do have a library that meets our needs, and it's not shrunken.
Absolutely. Oh, right. Yes, that's why our guidelines are such that they are. And just last thing, because I'm not going to shy away from the whole book thing. If you were to look at what's happening in publishing, if you look at what's happening in circulation in libraries all over the country, the circulation, especially among adults, of physical books is going way down. And it's just, you can solve for how much money you spend. This is in every single library in the United States, and I'm in tune with about 150 of them through a network that we call the Urban Libraries Council. The numbers are not lying. So for me to say that I'm going to build a library that's going to have room for 65,000 volumes like we did in 1972 when this building opened it would be disingenuous, and it would also say, it doesn't matter all the other uses that we can, we could create a phenomenally big children's room. We have what we're doing we're responding to the market, frankly, in terms of what is needed by residents, not nothing else. It's not I'm an English major. I've got a nice library in my own home. If it were up to me, I would have something there would be monographs everywhere. But our job is to not just plan for today and what we're seeing today, but also plan for what we're seeing in the short-term future. And so, we all have our own personal take on it, but that's not, it's not. I may not disagree with that.
Commissioner Nagy had a question. We're going to come to the community in a minute, you guys. Commissioner Nagy.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm having a little difficulty wrapping my head around the idea that you use guidelines rather than specs, requirements. How do you evaluate the responsiveness of a proposal when they don't actually have to provide you with the requirements?
Jaspreet, you can talk about this because Jaspreet is the main sort of client here. And I will say what she said earlier, that it works for us to have more flexibility. What we don't know right now is how much of this community wants from their children's room versus their adult space, from their meeting room. I don't want to think that we can be so prescriptive to tell.
That's not my question.
Okay.
I understand that you want the flexibility, but in terms of evaluating the proposals to see which one wins and which one doesn't, generally you weigh evaluation factors, and I'm just wondering how you weigh guidelines versus actual requirements.
It's maybe nuanced. Go ahead, Jaspreet.
My audio still comes through, or do I need to get back?
Everyone's having a lot of trouble hearing everything, so if you
Okay.
get closer.
Okay, got it. So we evaluate whether it's the DIMPED RFP or the library's standalone RFPs. We don't focus on requirements, and frankly, in our own RFPs, we don't even get this hunkered down in the specificity of precedence, this or that. We look for qualifications of the design firms. It is, you get a good collaborator, a solid collaborator. Prescriptive requirements make sense when the bar is really low, when you have to compare apples to oranges. And that's prescriptive requirements result in cookie cutter outcomes. And that's what we try and avoid. We have been recognized for our design excellence. We are an award-winning system, and I think that's proof in itself that our process works. And we do a lot of emphasis on qualifications of our design collaborators. And in the RFP evaluation criteria that DIMPED published, that's one of the criteria that we are speaking to and evaluating on.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you're actually evaluating the design team, not guidelines, not specs.
And their ability we look at the body of their work that they've done, and some of the concepts that they put in gives us a good sense of whether they get our mindset or they don't get our mindset.
And how do you weigh, what percentage of your evaluation criteria go to the question of what the design qualifications are of the teams that you're looking at? I have not been able to find, this will be a question for DIMPED as well.
Yeah.
I have not been able to find in the RFP anywhere where you actually spell out the weight of the evaluation factors as opposed to just what they are. I would love to know what weight you're assigning to each factor as you're evaluating all of these proposals. And that applies to the library too. So if somebody could get back to me on that, I'd be really grateful.
Yeah, hey.
You want to come here, Daniel?
Yeah, right there.
Sorry, you got to stand sort of behind here.
Stands next to the computer.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Daniel Lyons. I'm with the Deputy Mayor's Office for Planning and Economic Development, or DEMPED. I manage various real estate projects across the city, including this one. Glad to be here tonight to continue the discussion with the ANC and the community about this project. The criteria are in the, as Jaspreet said, they are listed in the actual RFP, which again is on the project website, so anybody can look that up online. And there are not specific weights to each one. They all matter. We take into evaluation all of the criteria, and certainly that includes the community preferences that were expressed as a result of our RFP process. It includes, as Jaspreet was referring to, the qualifications and experience of the team members that have come to be part of each team that responded to the RFP. And we rely on all of the panel members, including DCPL and DPR, to inform their opinion on whether, for example, the teams qualify. They've had good experience with the team members in the past or not. Does that help?
No, but thank you. Because what I'm still looking for is how do you pick this without like throwing a dart against a wall? So normally you have points assigned or percentages assigned to different evaluation factors, not just like we look at them all. So maybe we can have this conversation offline so that people can get on with their questions. But I would really like to talk about this piece.
Yeah.
Commissioner Clemency, then Commissioner Shaw.
Sure. I'm a mom with 2 kids, and I also work in an elementary school. And one of the things that I have loved about the Chevy Chase Library and the Palisades Library, where we lived before this, was that the children's room was upstairs, and it had they are very bright spaces, but the light is not direct shining in the face. And when I've gone to the new Tenley Library, that downstairs children's area seems very cold. You also hear a lot of noise from people coming in. Some of the people coming into the library are using it not quietly, right? And it can be very disturbing. And I was just wondering, other than the times when I had to schlep and I had twins. So at the very beginning, I was carrying 2 buckets up the stairs. But otherwise, my kids could go up and downstairs, and most children who live in this neighborhood live in 2-story houses. We don't have many 1-level houses. So is there a requirement to have the children's room on the ground floor? Can we still have it up? I think that natural light is so important, and also a feeling of coziness or separateness, a separate, like, safe, cute bubble for them. I don't like it when it's in the middle of kind of an adult world.
Yeah. So look, our designs have evolved quite a bit since Tenley, which was designed in 2010, 2009, long before I got here. I don't disagree that there are issues with some of our older new builds. I will say that your question is like the perfect question for the opening salvo when we start meeting with our architects and the community. In fact, you mentioned Palisades, Jaspreet, you'll remember, that was probably the most heated discussion about whether the children's room would be on the 2nd floor, providing that natural light and that sense of safety, versus those who wanted it on the 1st floor who didn't want to bring their strollers onto an elevator. And it was, it was a relatively democratic process. And I think more people wanted it on the 2nd floor, which is why it was there. But again, I won't take sides, certainly. If there's an overwhelming desire from the community about where something should be, we'll go with the community. But those decisions will not be made tonight for sure. So be assured.
So I have 2 quick questions. The first is, as you know, 2 of the 8 design concepts have the library in a separate building. Do you happen to have a preference whether the library be in a separate building or be within a larger unit, multi-purpose building? Yeah. The second question is, within a multi-purpose building, what's your experience? West End Library, I think, is probably the only one in DC, if I'm not mistaken, where you have to manage a library within a larger complex? And how has that experience worked? What are lessons learned from that?
Great question. I'm agnostic at this point about the container of the library. I think the West End Library has been a phenomenal success for the DC Public Library System and the community that it serves. The nice thing about having a library as part of a larger complex, typically it means, I treat the libraries like a business. For me, when I go to the mayor or the council for money, they want to know how many, butts in seats. And density works for libraries because it means more people are using it versus oftentimes with standalones could be a little bit more remote. But of course, either works provided that your specifications are met. So I don't care. We're working on some other projects that could be standalone or could be mixed use with WMATA right now. So, for me, as long as the finances works and everything else, important thing for us is to get work underway when it's time to do the library part because it can work. And what we've learned, for the West End Library, we've had a lot of lessons learned in that project. We even put together a little short white paper on like a 5-year after the fact, what's been good, what hasn't worked. We could have used some better sound attenuation between the library and the adjacent cafe. There's a whole host of things, but we're a lot smarter even than we were 2018. So, yeah.
Density, I understand, is your friend administratively. I get that. But how does it work for you on a day-to-day management basis?
It hasn't really been much of a problem at the West End Library. The library manages its own facility. We actually get a steady stream of funding from the sale of condominiums as part of a not super easy to understand arrangement. So it's been providing some maintenance dollars, which has been helpful to us. It hasn't been a major headache at all, to be honest with you. I mean, and frankly, part of the agreement, we don't have to library, and we're not great landscapers. I'll be the first to admit that. We've got some really high-end landscaping taking place at that East Bank building, or the Westlight, I guess, East Bank, Westlight. So there are some benefits of having additional expertise on site. Jaspreet, I don't know if you've got any others, but.
Oh, yeah, just a real quick question. I wanted to go back to the swing space. I know you said it was budgeted. Do you imagine the swing space being local to the community, or is there in your past build outs, what's the furthest distance you've seen swing space be?
Swing space is very challenging, and it's so dependent upon what's happening in the neighborhood. Sometimes it's been pretty easy, like when we did the Mount Pleasant Library, we fit something out just down the street that ultimately became the Thai restaurant. Other libraries, we've had a real beast of a time finding a good spot for interim. It's early in the process, but we'll start looking. The Cleveland Park Library, we couldn't even really find something, so we had to move all the way over to Van Ness to provide something. And then we were also working collaboratively with a church to do story time. So, the one thing I tell people, don't get hung up on the interim library because it's never going to be satisfactory, number one, because it's so small. It's outrageously expensive to do interim libraries. There are lots of headaches. And, we can be very stealth and creative in terms of how we deliver services during a construction project. I remind people that when the MLK library was closed, we didn't have much of an interim library, but we did a lot of services in the community and things of that nature. So it's a conversation worth having, but it's usually a little bit easier as you get closer, so what parcels of land might be available, that sort of thing.
Really, really quick. You just said that you got funds from the sale of the condos at Westlake?
There's a
General fund.
I'm sorry?
There's a fund.
Yeah, there's a fund that results in some dollars that go to the upkeep of the communal spaces at the library.
And so when those condos were sold, more money was put into the general fund?
Yeah, there's a specific,
Do you have a similar, I mean, we're not selling condos in this site presumably, but do you have a similar arrangement here for getting money from whoever develops this site for maintenance for the library?
I don't think that there's any, that would have to be part of the negotiation. I mean, and again, those are also,
It's not part of the RFP or not?
Um,
The RFP?
The structure in the West End structure has condominiums which are for sale,
Yes.
residential properties. And the idea here, all the proposals that were presented to the community 2 weeks ago are for residential apartments, not condominiums.
Right, but developers could make payments for maintenance presumably to the library, and I'm asking, is that part of the structure of this deal? Whatever deal you guys work out.
As Rich said, we're not at that point yet to discuss the financial structure exactly, but you know, a significant part of the project here is going to be affordable housing, so it's going to be, it's not the same thing as the West End.
it is a different model.
All right, thank you.
It
So,
couldn't be any more different than
thanks.
Westlaw.
Do we want to go to community questions for VCPL, or do you want to do DPR and then a whole general round of community questions?
There's a question.
Okay.
Just a couple comments and then one question. When you talk about the number of people coming into the library compared to other libraries, it's not really the same here, because I know I looked at this several months ago. I included in Park, you have yoga classes. Tenley, I think there's some sort of senior class. I think Tenley might have their ANC meetings there. They have events there. We have a community center next door. So that's where we have a yoga class. That's where we have things for seniors and game night and whatever. And that's where we have meetings. So you can't really compare this library to the others in terms of numbers, you know, because with these new ones, you're doing all these things that we have the community center. So it's little apples and oranges. And also, you know, the very edge of Chevy Chase, we're not on Metro. And I suspect most people in Montgomery County, which is just right across Western Avenue, probably just go to the Montgomery County libraries. I mean, some come here, the ones really close, but most would go to the Chevy Chase Library down in Connecticut. So anyway, the main thing is a lot of stuff that's now happens at our community center.
And, you know, I could probably come up with 5 additional things that we could do if we had space in the library to do it. So, but yeah, your point well taken.
And the other thing is, you know, when I look at the other projects you've done, to me, what really stands out of those is the Southwest Library. You know, why? It's standalone. Of course, you have a beautiful, like, it's got trees all around it. Right now, we've got a heritage tree out front, which they claim they're going to save, but you know, so often these, you know, they promise to save all the beautiful willow oaks at the Hearst Pool, and they're dying. Some have already died. The roots get damaged. And right now, we have a really lovely garden, reading garden out front. We've got mature trees out front, beautiful river birches. With all the housing being added, that's all going to go. Hopefully, the heritage tree will say, but all the stuff in the middle, which you already have. And if we weren't adding all this housing, you could just redo the library and have real trees to look out the windows and see, because they are important to people, as opposed to maybe a painting of a tree on a wall. So again, you know, this housing is really going to cut into our green space, our trees, whatever. And I think that stuff is important. But I have one question. Where is the funding coming from for both the library and community center? Early on, years ago, the idea was that, unlike the West End, the city would be paying for the library because somehow they wanted to keep control of the whole project.
Yeah, we have funding in our capital improvement plan for this library.
And will the developers be doing some of it, or what? Or is it all coming from DC, or do we know yet?
I can't speak to that, but we do have dedicated funding for the library.
Next community question.
Just a quick question based on previous library improvement projects. Is LEED certification kind of a mandatory requirement as part of the work that you are doing for these improvement projects? And is there a certain level of LEED that you are aspiring to?
Go ahead, Jaspreet. This is
Correct, yes. The district mandates that we
Jaspreet, stand over here.
Correct. The district mandates that we achieve LEED, and we are committed to, and in the requirements, we did say LEED gold. And in addition to the LEED gold certification, we are also mandated for net zero energy as part of the process. Yeah.
Jane, and this Jane.
Hi, for years I was a long-term substitute teacher at Lafayette Elementary, and it's this question builds on Commissioner Grunwald's question about size. And my understanding of the importance of collections in relation to that overall size, square footage. And it's a Lafayette tradition for every grade from grade 3 up. They have a project, a book of works, at least one. They come to the library as a class and they get their source materials. And that's a critical part of their education, not just in terms of researching the library, but they learn how to use the library. It establishes a habit of coming to the library, they get wonderful information, and it's just a critical.
Great. And, when I was speaking to the woman earlier, I'd mentioned that where we've seen a major decline in usage of physical materials with adults. I stressed adults. Children and youth provides most of our physical circulation. And again, we are responsive to the community, so we wouldn't change that.
Yeah, I just want to say, modern public libraries provide services to communities that the communities demand. And my sense in this community is because this library has been here so long and it follows a library service model that's 50 years old, that a lot of the community doesn't have a good sense of the kinds of things, the range of services that they could be getting from a new and modern library. I'm just wondering, is there a video or some multimedia resource that you could point to that would help people understand what they're missing and they could be getting?
One of the things that we typically do when we start new projects is that we'll invite a group of community members and we'll tour some of DC's public libraries. We'll meet the staff. We'll talk about all the various spaces, and we'll be committing to do that same thing here. But, DC is a pretty small town. You can grab the L2 right over to Cleveland Park, and you'll see the difference in terms of the types of activities that can take place there. So we can do both.
I just wanted to add something more to the discussion about the people who like me are very concerned about children's literature. I used to work at Great Cheshire Cat Books here. I'm a librarian and I build children's libraries. When I first saw the MLK collection downtown, I was absolutely thrilled. I had no idea that this new library was going to have an incredible world-class children's collection. And I could take my granddaughter who comes down from New York and just has to go down there every time she's here because they have a huge collection of children's books in French, and her first language is French. It has one of the most impressive children's collections I've seen anywhere. And I know that that's very much behind the DC Public Library system and the people involved in building those collections. So no one needs to be sad about that, I assure you.
I'm not sure I understand the process. When the presentation came from the various developers, I foolishly and I guess ignorantly thought that here were 8 different proposals and eventually one would be selected and would be built. But now what I think I'm understanding from you is after a developer is selected, then I think you said a year or a year and a half of planning after that for the library.
Yes.
So this is going to be, it's not entirely clear that I'll survive. This is like a really, do I understand? Right. So the library development and library planning starts even before the building or after the building is done? What's the order? I'm not understanding the order of the library design as it fits into the eventual projects?
Other than sort of knowing where it's going to be roughly, the planning starts fresh, as if we're building something right out of the ground. There may be some efficiencies to be captured. It's fun that the rec center will also be building their space. There are some efficiencies to be captured there, so maybe we can make more space for books or other things if we can share like one big auditorium or something like that. But you look healthy, by the way, sir. It's a process. It really is, and we want to get it right, and not just sort of and not just give somebody carte blanche to go build something, and then we turn around and say, well, this is not what we wanted. And your voice hasn't been heard yet, as far as I'm concerned.
So what is the timing starting from May 2025?
Yeah, I don't.
Nothing has happened except conversations.
I'll let DemPed talk about that. Basically, the DemPed has to sign off on this before the library work can begin, and that is a bit. And Daniel or Gilles will tell you how that works. But it's.
I'll just comment briefly on that particular point, so we can jump back to the other questions that you have. But so we're going through this disposition process. There's been a lot of engagement leading up to this point. The comprehensive plan, the small area plan, the RFP, the zoning, surplus hearing, disposition hearing. And I think everybody knows, hopefully you all know, that the record is still open from the disposition hearing that was conducted 2 weeks ago. So we welcome your feedback for that purpose. The step that's coming is the selection of a respondent, one of those 8 teams that submitted or that you heard at the disposition hearing. I can't give you an exact date for that. That will ultimately be at the discretion of the deputy mayor and the mayor when that decision comes down. But what I will tell you about the overall timeline and what Rich was talking about is once that selection is made, then a package would go to council, and council would actually conduct its own hearings on top of the hearings we've already conducted, a surplus hearing and a disposition hearing, and you all have another opportunity to offer your comment directly to them. They will take some time to review the package, hear from you, make a decision, and if it is approved, this is usually at least 4 months, I would say. Then once council has given its approval, then there is a 2-year. So essentially, what they're giving is what's called disposition authority, and that typically is a 2-year time period until it expires. And so during that 2 years is when design is happening, planning is happening, permits are happening. And within that is all the stuff that Rich talked about and Jaspreet talked about, like figuring out exactly what the library should look like, as well as the community center. And that's an iterative process, as Rich and Jaspreet said, working with you to get your feedback on whether there should be an auditorium and what's in that children's room, et cetera. Hopefully that helps. I'll let you get back to it. It's very helpful.
I don't know what the construction timeline is.
Oh,
yeah, maybe we can stick to the library for now, just because, yeah.
Let's go to these, take 2 more questions from DCPL, and then we need to transition to DPR. We haven't heard from DPR yet.
Yes.
All the people who submitted plans a few weeks ago, were they deemed experienced enough, or some of them know that?
I'm not on the technical review panel, madam, and it's an open process yet, so I don't think that, I don't think it.
No, all of them considered okay.
It's still very much it's an active RFP, it's an open competition. We're not at that point where we haven't made a selection, so I can't comment on that.
And my other question is, they all have these very elaborate plans and buildings. Was that all made up at this point, or would you really start? Will they start from scratch, or would those buildings look like that's what?
See, the designs that were presented are conceptual, so that is definitely a starting point and sets expectations that we will hold the designers or the developers respondents to. But again, once a team is selected, as I was saying earlier, there is that 2-year time period in which the design is refined and the library and the community center in particular would be refined. So that's the starting point.
Okay. Brian, then we'll go to the back.
One short, very specific question for Jaspreet. Jaspreet, you are a world-renowned architect yourself, licensed in New Delhi. You have talked about in other forums that you calculate a return on investment around things like private projects. Can you talk about how you calculate the return on investment or the ROI number, and whether you expect to present an ROI number to the mayor of the city?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we can take that offline in the interest of time.
That's right.
That's very technical, I think.
Technical, yeah. In the back.
Sorry, but we can try.
Ron, yeah, go on.
Yeah, question, you've got 8 proposals. What I'm hearing is any one of them you'll create excellence. Is that a correct statement?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, and that any proposal that you pick will be different in terms of the type of excellence. For example, will you deliver that second floor north facing? Maybe that proposal that wins won't be able to do that. Okay, so are you going to be early enough in the selection process where you can guarantee that kind of excellence? Or are you just going to wait it out and hope it's going to be excellent, depending on where the windows are, where the building's facing, all kinds of factors that can enter into disturbing and never.
Well, Jaspreet is part of the review team, which is good news for library lovers and me. And look, every library is going to be different. There are going to be trade-offs in terms of light, in terms of space, in terms of ceiling heights. You know, it's not a cookie cutter thing. But again, we'll stand behind whatever selected. We're going to be really excited about building something world-class.
Let's transition to DPR.
And can I just say, while DPR is coming up to speak, just without in any way endorsing any of the 8 proposals, a comment was made earlier that all or most of them provide less square footage for the 2 public institutions that we're talking about here. 5 of the 8 provide more square footage by their numbers. 2 more provide the same square footage, and 1 doesn't specify square footage of the public institutions. Thanks.
All right. Well, thanks so much, everybody. I'm glad to be here. Brent Sisco from DPR. I'm a landscape architect by training, so a little bit different perspective on things. This is my 16th year at DPR. And so I just want to say you look fantastic still, and your hair is amazing. So I think you're hanging in there with us for the whole project. So thank you. I'm going to quickly run through this project. I know we don't have a lot of this slides. I don't know we have a ton of time to go through this, but let me see if I can get this to work. So I'm sorry. As far as existing conditions with the center, the center was built almost exact same time this facility was built, the library. This is the rooms in the existing community center, and you can sort of see the.
Please speak up.
Can you guys not hear? Can you guys hear me? Okay, I'm sorry. I'll do better. So these are the list of the rooms in the existing community center by square footage, and we thought this was interesting. Obviously, the biggest takeaway from this was how inefficient this building is, or the community center is, and I think this is something Rich talked about with this. The new design, we're really looking for a very much more efficient design. And I think we're looking at around 20,000 square feet. This building at Chevy, or the community center now, is about 30,000 square feet gross, which means there's so much unused space in that facility. So we think with 20,000 square feet or thereabouts, we can meet all the programmatic needs that we've been asked to meet for their community center. These are some of the programs. I was shocked at how many different programs, from Tai Chi to ballet to TKD, woodworking. There's an amazing woodworking lab downstairs. It's really incredible, but just the the amount of programs that comes to the community center is I think unparalleled at any other community center that I know about in the district. So just an amazing testament to the community use here. And I should say this is also on the website. All this information was taken from the RFP website. So this is on the website. If you go there, you'll be able to find all this information. So our spatial goal, which is also taken from the RFP and the website, is approximately 20,000 square feet of indoor space. And of course, we're looking to possibly co-locate space with the library, including potential mechanical space, storage space, IT closets. We talked about potentially sharing an auditorium with the library. So I think there's a great opportunity to share co-located space, which will free up additional space for the library usage or the community center. Interior spaces are flexible athletic space. I don't want to read through all this, but sort of the things that we've always talked about that are popular at DPR facilities and things we heard through the surveys we've received from you and the ANC. Of course, a gymnasium, auditorium, craft room, kitchen, fitness room for exercise, and flexible athletic space for indoors. This is something that's gotten to be really super popular at DPR facilities, yoga, ballet, dance, things like that. And as far as exterior spaces go, we heard a lot about rooftop gathering and event space, spaces outside to work and read. I know there's some really cool outdoor spaces now with the benches where people can kind of gather. Of course, the playground is hugely popular. The sport court, the pickleball courts, I know are hugely popular. That's something we'd like to continue. And then outdoor fitness equipment was another thing that also came up through some of the goals for the project. But essentially, you could pretty much use DCPL's goals and design principles in this swap DPR, the name in and out, for how we approach design. We want flexible, efficient facilities that support a wide range of community uses. And I won't read through all this again, but multi-generational environments for arts, rec, play and learning, health and wellness, and really just to create an inviting, memorable space that is accessible to the entire community and where people can just come and have fun and meet people and not be a third space. You hear talk about third spaces between work and home where people come. So we really want this to be that kind of space. So some things we've heard, we want this to be an inclusive facility. Invigorating was one word we heard. The design's curb appeal should attract visitors. We heard a lot about the relationship between the facility and Connecticut Avenue. And probably the biggest thing, which is why it's in bold, is consistent community engagement is important to residents for the success of this project. So we have that at the forefront of our mind. So real quickly, going through some of the design drivers, and these are the things that we, regardless of the project, regardless of the team, we hold them accountable to a certain level of excellence, like Jaspreet mentioned. And I'll quickly run through these. Each of our projects, we try to include community context. This is a picture of Shepherd Park Community Center in Ward 4 and Arboretum Community Center in Ward 5. So interestingly, on the Shepherd Park Community Center, we actually got photos of the school kids with the permission of the kids and their parents. And I don't know if you can see the faces on the front of that building. That turned out to be an amazing art project, and the kids loved it. For the Arboretum Community Center, I don't know if you've been to the Arboretum Community Center, but it's got a lot of aspects that are really similar to the Arboretum location across the street, the National Arboretum, including the outdoor facade and the location. So it's a really interesting sort of context to the community that both of these locations serve. Sustainability, again, is a huge feature. We've mentioned lead accountability, lead gold, a level of compliance. We've also talked about net zero energy. This is Arboretum's Community Center's gymnasium, where we use mass timber that actually equaled a net carbon reduction of 30%. So this is sort of a newer technology that we're starting to implement, and it's beautiful. I love to go into this space at the Arboretum Community Center. This is their half gymnasium, and you can tell it's a really big usable space for that community. Flexibility is a huge deal. We don't, some of the biggest, I think, lessons learned from DPR facilities that we've seen is that the more spaces that are dedicated to a certain function are often the spaces that are least used. So we want spaces that can be used throughout the day through different folks, through different age groups. A really good example of that is the Arboretum's multi-purpose room, which serves for ANC meetings. It also serves for meals for children. There's a kitchenette that's built into this facility. So there's a lot of different things you can do within the room. It's actually used really from daylight all the way till the facility closes. And there's also a projector in the room. So there's a lot of really cool stuff you can do. They actually can move the tables around. So if you want to have a yoga class or a Zumba class or things like that, that's really an amazing transformation to see. We've talked about universal design. This goes above and beyond ADA standards. And this is really meant to be thinking about how we can make people, regardless of ability, disability, feel safe and welcome in our facilities. And that can go to things like wider hallways, tactile spaces for people that might have a walking cane to tell the difference between a surface and when they're about to go outside. There's a lot of different things you can do. And actually the next picture is a good example of our therapeutic rec center. This actually just opened in December, but these really wide hallways that emit light this is actually my favorite spot in the whole facility. And I know this translates to biophilic design that was talked about earlier. Biophilic design, again, is just this idea or the concept that nature can improve your mood and your creativity literally in a matter of minutes. It's pretty amazing what that can do. And it can be anything from having light in a facility all the way to natural materials. At the Therapeutic Rec Center, we actually use natural wood, natural stones inside. And we've created seating areas by windows so people can actually really be able to see in and out of the facility and just feel sort of like you're not in a room sort of like this. I hate to say that, but that's sort of the thinking there. No disrespect to the library. And then again, sort of connectivity. It kind of goes back to the first about community context, but we've got some really interesting places. Kenilworth has a demonstration kitchen where we do cooking classes. People come in. We've had some famous chefs come in and teach skills, and it's really interesting. People from the community come in and just teach family recipes, and they can pass that down, and they're all video recorded, and just on how to pickle cucumbers, things like that, or make pickles from cucumbers. I'm not a cook, if you couldn't tell. And then the Edgewood Recreation Center in Ward 5 has an amazing urban rooftop garden where we actually are growing a huge amount of vegetables. We actually produced like 6,000 pounds of produce in one single year, came from here, and the community actually came and was able to get that produce right from the roof and take it home and cook it and use it. That's been an outstanding program. We want to continue to do that. So our community centers are really serving the communities that they reside in. So community engagement, much like DCPL, we have a series of meetings. It's like the Daytona 500. It's going to be around the track we go, around the track we go. We'll have a series, and it's sort of based on milestones within the design period. So architects, and I'm not married to an architect, but I was an English major, so I can connect with you on that. There are milestones that they get to, design development, schematic development, but those are sort of the milestones we come to you as a community and say, this is what we have so far. Tell us what you think. And we really do value community input and to massage the design, to know what things you want to include, what things are important to you. So community engagement is going to be a huge part of this. I just want to reiterate how important that is to both DPR, DCPL, and the entire DC government. So there'll be plenty of more information to come out about that. I don't know if folks were around for the first set of meetings we had about the community center back when David Bell was first hired in 2019 before COVID. He showed this drawing. I've always kind of kept it because we're in the very left-hand side that looks like my handwriting a little bit, where things can look completely jumbled. Where we'll get to is a straight line, which means a consensus majority of folks agree on what we want to do. So this is just sort of a visual that I like to look at, that sort of helps me put my mind at ease. And we feel right now that there's so much information, but we're going to get to a place where the majority of folks agree on what we're going to do so we can implement that project. I'm Brent Sisco. There's my contact information. Our community outreach specialist, our chief of external affairs is Tommy Jones. If you've seen Tommy once, you'll never forget him. He is about 6'9". He looks like a professional wrestler, so you will never forget him if you see him. And with that, I'm wrapping it up, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you. Commissioner.
I have a couple. I didn't see anything or need a presentation about the pre-K, the co-op program. My kids personally did the pre-K, the co-op program out of the Palisades one. And so I didn't know if that was like gonna be going by the wayside. I also didn't see anything about voting. And those are uses of these public spaces. So what are your thoughts that those would not be things occurring here?
Not necessarily. It's just, I did forget about the co-op room that's here now, that we used for the disposition hearing for part of was that one of the rooms I think we used? But yeah, I think that everything's are still on the table. Nothing's been taken off. So that's still something we were considering for sure. And I apologize, I left that off. That was that was a mistake on my part.
Summer camp.
So it's right, that summer camp room, right.
Okay.
It,
I mean, it's fine if it's multi-purpose. I just want to make sure it was something that you had in your brain.
yes.
But the other thing, I mean, I know that it's sort of the capital and operating are two split streams, but we have seen several times where we had a grand project. I'm thinking of Lafayette Elementary School. For example, the first one, it was told that we were going to have community meetings and we could use the spaces. That does not happen. I had to have the Girl Scouts 3 years in my house and the band program 3 years in my house because the school wouldn't accommodate it. And we don't have ANC meetings in the school because it's so difficult. So we build this great thing and we're not allowed in it. We have the Lafayette Rec Center, $4 million. We had to have a porta potty back there for 3 years because they won't open the bathrooms on weekends. We asked for a party room, birthday party rooms. They won't open it on weekends. We want to have meetings there. They close it for public use at 7:30 at night. The building's technically open until 8, but you can't have a meeting after 7:30, so there are no night classes. So the purposes for which these structures were built aren't happening because the staffing doesn't accommodate it. And that's a real waste of our money, our energy, it's a real shame.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that's something we are looking at in this facility is office space that the community could. One thing we're looking at in this new design is flexible space that could be used for a meeting like this, for instance, and that stays open, until
But it has to
closure.
be, there has to be staffing for someone in the building to keep the building open, for that office to be open. And that's where, DPR is not there. On the weekends, we have no bathrooms. And the weekend birthday parties, they aren't happening. They can't happen. They're not even reservable. So I would just hate to go through all this, design and then actually not be able to use the spaces for the relatively inexpensive cost. I don't know what a DPR staffer is, but I don't think they're making $100,000 a year maybe. So it's really cheap relatively to have a staff to keep these great spaces open.
Yeah.
So I would urge the city to think about that.
Thank you. And the thing about voting, if there is voting here before, or this facility, or the community, that would continue. That's just a function of us making that happen.
So Brent, you guys have been at this for a while because going back to 2017, 18, 19, December 2019, you presented a design concept to redo the community center.
Right.
With DGS. What has carried forward from prior studies that's informing what you're about now?
Yeah, so we've actually used that survey that Commissioner Speck, I think, and others helped put together, because that was an immense amount of information. Yeah, and we found that to be extremely valuable. So I think a lot of the things that I didn't list every single thing, but I still have all that information. And I think we'll continue to rely on that information as we go through the engagement process, because it's going to help set the foundation for the programs that we're looking to include, like the auditorium. I think that was a big request. I don't remember all the exact ones, but I absolutely still have all that information.
I've actually looked many times at the design concept. So the information from the survey informed what you presented in December of 2019. So
it did.
Separate and apart from data driving the design concept, are there any elements of the design concept that you're drawing on now for the future community center?
No, not really, because it's kind of an apples to oranges now. That was going to be a remodel almost of the existing facility.
Right.
Now we're looking to completely demo and rebuild new. So I think we're not constrained by some of the constraints we had before from that old building.
But some of the functional parts of that, though, in terms of what you envision the community center would be, the needs that would be satisfying,
yes,
purposes it would be serving.
Right. Correct. Right.
I'd like to request that the chair maintain some sort of order as far as sequence of questions, because you had a question before people just start blurting out questions.
So we're going through the same thing with the commissioners, and then we come to community.
Right. So I just wanted to add on. I don't have a question, but I'm just going to add a comment. I used to live in the Edgewood neighborhood, and so you guys went through that project. They did a really great job with community engagement. I participated in that a lot, specifically asking for like the rooftop garden. And I don't know if you guys have been there, but it is a really great example of where the community comes together. They have a splash pad over there. It's a lot of people on the track. And when I say it's multi-generational, it's multi-generational. You have kids playing on the field. You have adults, seniors walking around the track, and they did. I know we have examples of where DPR may not have been responsive in community engagement, but I think that is at least one of the projects that I can say they did a really great job. And I lived over there. I was in all the meetings. I said I wanted to, work out. We have workout facilities there. It was very engaged. So I just want to add in just a little bit of positivity for those that may not have any, but they did an excellent job. And it's a really great building. It used to be a tiny building, tiny building. And it's really great. So that's all I wanted to add. So I just wanted to say thank you for your community engagement that you did over there.
Thank you.
And I hope it continues to move forward over here and listening to what we would like to see in having a multi-generational functional use. My son has participated at summer camp. So, I think if we can have something, those functional rooms where it can be summer camp, pre-K, ANC meetings, I know you guys can do a good job, and I hope everyone can, look at the bright side, cup half full versus cup half empty.
Thank you.
Opportunity we have.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go to the community. Brian, then then you.
Just to follow up on Commissioner Simmons' enthusiasm about Edgewood, Brent, when you look at what's planned for this community center, recreation center, can you compare it to, say, Edgewood and Kennedy, or even Deanwood? When you look at Deanwood, it's 53,000 square feet, a pool. Why isn't that part of what's planned for here?
Yeah, so most of DPR projects are budget driven. They're driven by the budget for the project, and we have about $19.5 million from DPR for this project. That doesn't include the DCPL funding.
So the budget weren't a consideration, just as an example. I mean, I'm not saying like the commander's going to swoop in and stuff, but if somebody did, if there was an opportunity and the budget wasn't a consideration, what do you think the community needs?
Yeah, so I think we would rely a lot on the community feedback that we've received, plus the site constraints have a big deal to do with what we can include. Edgewood specifically, the most popular feature at Edgewood is DPR's largest indoor fitness center. It's right at 2,500 square feet. It's free to district residents. It's like a Gold's Gym. It's amazing. Yeah,
I
yeah.
haven't seen, I've been there. It's amazing.
It is amazing. The best thing, it's free for district residents. I don't know how people do pay to go to other facilities, but we're trying to replicate that same thing. These successful things we see at different locations within this project. And we've seen a really successful demonstration kitchen like at Kenilworth, and we're trying to pull from all these different projects that have done things well and lessons learned on what was really successful, trying to implement that in the Chevy Chase project. So we're pulling from a lot of different places. That's a great question though. Yeah, thank you.
It was really helpful to see the list of all the different kinds of programs that are offered at different community centers around the city. It would be really helpful, I think, to the community when you're coming around to get more specific, detailed community input, to take the list of all of the programs that the DC Public Libraries offer, many of which completely overlap with these programs at the community centers, because we have a unique situation here where we can combine facilities, as you said, and we can combine spaces. But we're looking a makerspace. There are things that can be done between the two facilities that can allow both the community center and the library to focus on their strengths. So for example, the library is open on weekends. So if there needs to be meeting spaces or party rooms or whatever that need to be open on weekends, that could perhaps be something that is supported by the DC Public Library's weekend staff. I just think that compilation of those capabilities of the two kinds of facilities and presented to the community is needed before there can be meaningful input.
Right.
And I just want to ask one other question though. We all saw how rapidly and effectively the DC Public Libraries could respond to the COVID pandemic by by having tests available in all the libraries. That was really impressive and wonderful. Did the community centers who were in places where there were COVID, where there were libraries, did they also help in that way? Or is that kind of ability to respond quickly to the community's needs, public health needs?
Yes, ma'am.
It's the strength of one institution to the other.
Right. And we talk a lot about resiliency and resiliency hubs. So I got both of my, actually 4 of my COVID shots at Turkey Thicket Recreation Center. So our facilities basically turn into those kind of locations where people can vote, people can get their vaccinations. It's really a place for the community, that third place we talk about between work and home, to come and get services. And I think DCPL and DPR are aligned on wanting to help serve folks in that way. Yeah.
We go to gentleman in red, then I'm gonna go to online, then Andrea and Ron.
Peter Lewis, we have a tendency in the city to shove initiatives to the mayor's office down every story. It's like our traffic pattern around our house, 39th and Jennifer. There are now more accidents there, including injuries that were prior to that being done. Even though the majority of us maintain the traffic pattern the way it is. When it comes to community engagement, are you aware, or did you take into consideration surveys? In other words, needs assessments, insofar as the percentage of people that did not want a new community center / library.
We are. I mean, we see that. We do see that. But ultimately, we work for the mayor's office. Yeah. So, our charge really comes from the mayor.
So even if it was 90% of the community, which, in this particular case, it was the sum majority of 60% didn't want this, and 80% were concerned and did not want the, hybrid buildings here for fear that that trend would take place along Connecticut Avenue, where the military, that there would be more and more approvals and names, and consequently changing the land,
Right.
So that's why I was asking that question.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm really focused on the right.
And when there's a legitimate need for something good, when I was project operations director for the New York Times, and we decided to put a building up at 628th Avenue, and move from our old building that we've run for 96 years at 229 West 43rd in Manhattan. We did it. We built, third tallest building in Manhattan. next to the Empire State Building, Chrysler Building, and now look where we are now, or where we were back in 2007, New York Times. That's not the same project, but the point that I'm making is we built this colossal structure, and it wasn't needed. We should have stayed put or been and then ended up being a regret of that banner in the newspaper, just like it goes for the Tribune.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're making that analogy here.
Understood.
Yeah,
Yeah, understood.
That's not a DPR question, but let me go to Anna Ford. She had her hand raised. Anna, do you want to come off?
Yeah, I didn't know whether the people online can talk or not. These are really nice ideas. They're all standalone, the libraries.
Okay, while she's waiting to come off mute, Andre.
But
You mentioned rooftop gathering and event space.
when these
My
apartments go
thing
up,
is, are you imagining, or
the public is not going to
when you
feel
say
welcome
that
in the
there will
ID.
be an apartment building atop the recreation center, the community center, I mean, so that the roof will actually be 7 stories up? And if so, how will people access it?
Yeah, our idea about usage of the rooftop came from the ANC, I think from the ANC recommendations or the survey results. How that gets effectuated in the design is really, I think, to be developed. We don't have thoughts on exactly where it would be located. We're sort of gonna, I think, have to cross that bridge when we get to it. But we do like in concept, the idea of being able to use spaces that aren't traditionally used, as we've done before at places like Edgewood. But to answer your question, I'm not sure exactly where that would be located.
Edgewood, I assume, is just right on
It's-
top of the library,
it's-
not on top of residential.
Right. Edgewood is a 2-story facility and it's on top of one of the stories, right?
I mean, quite honestly, it seems to me that you would need to know how you would effectuate that in order to make the decision about whether to put apartments on top of it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's like people would have to travel through private space
Sure.
to get to a public space. And
Yeah, we're just not there
may not
yet,
be
right?
all that workable.
Right.
I'd like to say one other thing connected with that. Well, DC librarian Richard Reyes-Gavilan is not very responsive to this point, but in fact, the West End Library was flooded by the apartment buildings over it. And I think it was closed for 6 weeks and there was a lot of damage of books. And I know books are not libraries are not all about books anymore, but still it's kind of an expensive resource to destroy. And
Sure.
so I would actually, in my view, having the apartments above the community center would make more sense because there's less to destroy when someone's toilet ends up flooding the.
Good point. Good point.
We had time for one more, and I'm gonna go to a community member that hasn't had the opportunity to speak. We gotta wrap up. We were supposed to be out of the building at 8:30, and we pushed it as much as we can. Last question.
Understanding that there will be a sustainable community engagement process, I'm curious from DPR's point of view, and DC does as well, I guess, how important to your mission do you perceive a really good auditorium with really great AV so that we don't have lousy virtual meetings like today? But also, and I guess that in general for both of you about the importance that you see as having really good auditorium meeting space for the community. And for you specifically, Mr. Sisco, the sprung wood floor for the community center is, I understand, one of only 2 in the city, and the other was the Kennedy Center for ballet. Is that something that you perceive as important to continue as part of the facility for the center?
100%. Yes. I'm aware of the fact that it's a very specialty floor and only 2, you're right, I think exists. It's the only one in DPR's inventory. So we would very much like to keep that in the new design. As far as the auditorium goes, it's not something DPR traditionally does. We're a recreation base, but if it's something that's really important to the community and can align with other things like community gatherings, coordination with DCPL on anything, I think that's something we could absolutely look at, or we are looking at it. So thank you. I don't know if Rich.
Yeah, and when we say auditorium, and we're talking about a really good community room. And again, we leave it up to the community to decide what they want, and we'll talk about the opportunity costs, right? When we did the Cleveland Park Library, there was a mandate that we needed a space that could fit 200 people. And so we built the largest community room that we've got in the entire city. But that comes at some expense to some other program. So it would be just whatever the community feels is most important.
Thank you.
I want to wrap up by saying thank you. Thank you for the agencies for coming out tonight and giving us another opportunity.
Thanks for having us.
Engagement. Yeah.
Thank
Thanks for the commissioners, and especially thank you for the audience members and the community members that came out. We're going to continue to have these discussions as we go along in the process, so that you get an opportunity to ask your questions directly to the people that are making decisions. So thanks for coming out tonight. This won't be the last. It'll be a continuing process. Great questions from community and commissioners. I thought this went really well. Thank you all.
And I wanted to just ask folks to make it quick and staff stayed an extra hour past the